Now, with Brian Wilson live in Charlotte, this is Common Sense coverage of the Democratic National Convention with Brian and Brian, sponsored by the Media Research Center. 105.9 FM and AM 630. WMAL.
Hello again from Charlotte, North Carolina. Brian Wilson on Radio Row at the Time Warner Cable Arena. Joining us on the phone line, by the way, Brian Neiman back in D.C. Joining us on the phone line now is Bret Baier from the Fox News Channel. Bret, how are you?
Good morning, guys.
Okay, so I've got to start with this thing that I saw on your channel the other day, this interview you did with Senator Dick Durbin. Now, to lay the background, you had asked him about these reports that are out there that the Democrats had removed the word God from their platform and also had removed any reference to Jerusalem as the capital of Israel from their platform. And Dick Durbin gave you 9 kinds of grief about even having the temerity to raise such a question. It was a pretty intense interview.
Yeah, it was. It really was. And, we did a piece before Senator Durbin sat down and kind of laid out the questions and concerns that some had about the platform not including that language. It had been altered from 2008 to 2012. So that was the first question I asked him. But his reaction prompted me to ask, I think, 4 or 5 other questions because his immediate response was that I had an agenda and it was Fox pushing this narrative and how ridiculous it was for me to ask that question.
And yet, apparently it was important enough to them after questions were raised about it for them to go back in and try to change it yesterday in what turned out to be sort of a debacle in the opening of the convention yesterday.
We often talk, Brian, how these things are so scripted. This was a unscripted moment. They tried to put the 2008 language back in with God and Jerusalem, and the head of the convention, L.A. Mayor Villaraigosa, went up and said that they had to have a voice vote where they had to have 2/3 of the delegates vote to make this amendment to put the other language back in. So they held the voice vote, and clearly there was not 2/3 approval. In fact, many people in the room believed that the noes had it. So he didn't do it just once or twice. He did it 3 times. And then the parliamentarians stood next to him, and frankly, they were getting ready. They had all their computers getting ready for a roll call vote where they would actually ask delegates what their vote was. But then Villaraigosa went to the microphone and said, the chair, believes this is the amendment has passed, and they moved on. And there were all kinds of boos in the auditorium.
And Villaraigosa later said that it was because the directive came directly from the president that he wanted these things in the platform.
Yeah, in fact, the senior aide who gave that to the pool about the president said that he said to Democratic officials, why was God ever taken out?
Right.
That happens to be the second question that I asked Dick Durbin.
Which was what you were trying to get at was just tell us the thought process of why you wanted to make these changes and why. I mean, it was just a legitimate question. He obviously was not happy with it, but...
Yeah. So, I do think that it was kind of a big moment yesterday, and the fact that it got to the White House level and the fact that you had reporters who were not covering the story suddenly forced to cover the story because the president weighed in, was kind of a big deal yesterday.
I do too.
In the big picture of things, platforms don't really matter, but to have kind of that level of chaos over this amendment to get God and Jerusalem back into the platform was fairly significant.
Then there's this other issue about moving it back to the arena from the stadium. And here's the question. I mean, it's being debated everywhere. Did they do it because they were really concerned about the weather, or did they do it because they couldn't fill the arena and they didn't want to have their own empty chair problem like the Republicans had with Clint Eastwood? They didn't want to have empty chairs in the stadium while the president was speaking.
Yeah, they insist, obviously, that they could have filled the stadium, and their biggest logistical challenge now is to get the 65,000 tickets down to roughly 20,000. But many people were looking at the numbers and the busing, and they were busing people in from Georgia and South Carolina, and really questioning whether they were going to make it to 65,000. The weather, I guess there are many people out there who said if you have a Bruce Springsteen concert,
right,
and you have 20% chance of rain 36 hours away, most people don't cancel it. But on the flip side, there are many people looking at it that, one person gets hurt in a thunderstorm and the DNC has a big issue, much like the Republicans had by even threatening Isaac on that first day down in Tampa.
All right, Bill Clinton gave a speech last night. It went on for quite some time. Was there anything that stuck out to you? Were you surprised at all from the words from Bill Clinton last night?
Well, the speech was long, and it was actually longer than his 1988 speech.
Wow, I didn't know that.
14 minutes longer.
Oh, man.
And that 88, you remember,
that was what his
keynote. And he, at the end of that speech, he said, "In conclusion," and all the delegates
everybody applauded.
Yeah,
That's right. I remember that.
This deal, he clearly had the arena enthralled, and he is a rock star in the Democratic Party. The one thing that really caught me is when he made the case that Barack Obama could not have fixed this economy by what he found in just 4 years. And then he got personal. He said, "Trust me, I couldn't have done it. There was not a president who could have done it." And he pointing his finger. I guarantee you that will be a swing state ad probably before the end of the week.
Well, do you think there'll be an ad about this ramming through the platform? I mean, it seems like to me that's just something that's rife for having a lot of fun in a political ad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Mitt Romney talking to Carl Cameron yesterday talked about it, and at that point they talked that God and Jerusalem was out of the platform. But really the debacle about the actual putting it back in and the vote probably will make itself into an ad. I would venture to guess.
All right, Bret, it's always great to have you on. Thanks very much, and we'll be watching.
All right, see you guys.
Bret Baier, the Fox News Channel. Check him out at 6 o'clock. Special report with Bret Baier every weekday from Monday.